Most people think that when someone starts pulling away, the answer is to reach for them, to close the distance, to send the text, to ask the question, to remind him gently that you're still here, still soms, still willing. It feels like common sense. It feels like love. And it is almost always the exact thing that turns a wobble into a goodbye. Because here's what most people don't see coming. The reaching isn't the problem. The reaching is the symptom. And until you understand what it's actually a symptom of, you will keep doing it. And you will keep watching men drift out of your life, wearing the same slightly guilty, slightly relieved expression. And you will keep lying awake, trying to figure out what you did wrong, when the truth is you were doing the only thing you knew how to do. So let's start where you actually are. It's late. You've already looked at your phone more times than you can count, and you're replaying the exact phrase he used. Maybe it was, I just need some space. Maybe it was, I'm not sure what I want right now. Maybe it was nothing at all. Maybe it was just the slower replies, the shorter answers, the way he stopped asking about your day 3 weeks ago, and you noticed and told yourself you were being paranoid. You're replaying it and trying to decide if you misunderstood. You're constructing a version of the conversation where you said the thing that scared him. And if you could just find it, find the exact sentence, you could go back and unsay it. I need you to hear me on this. You didn't scare him off with a sentence. Nobody who is secure and certain about you gets dismantled by a Tuesday evening text. What you're feeling right now, that low, humming panic, that sense that something is leaving the room and you're supposed to stand there politely while it goes. That feeling has a name and it has a history, and it did not start with him. Here's the truth. If you're an anxious partner, and you probably know by now if you are, then distance doesn't register for you the way it registers for other people. For someone secure, a quiet few days is just a quiet few days. For you, it's a siren. Somewhere early in your life, love and uncertainty got braided together, and now your nervous system can't tell the difference between he's busy and he's leaving. So when he pulls back, and with an avoidant man, he will pull back, because pulling back is what avoidant men do the moment closeness starts to feel like a claim. Your whole body reads it as an emergency. And emergencies demand action. So you act, you text twice, you soften your voice, you ask if everything's okay in that careful, casual tone that isn't casual at all. You start performing okayness so hard that you can't hear yourself think. And here's the thing, he can feel all of it. Not consciously, but he feels the pressure, the way you feel weather changing. And the pressure is the one thing his entire emotional architecture is built to escape. Let me be clear about one thing before we go any further. This is not a script about manipulating a man into loving you. I have no interest in teaching you choreography. The calculated pause, the strategic unavailability, the game of being hard to get so he'll chase. That stuff works the way fireworks work, loudly and briefly, and then the sky goes dark again, and you're alone with someone who was attracted to a performance and not to you. What we're doing here is different. We're talking about what actually happens in him and in you when an anxious person stops reaching and starts standing still. Because standing still is not a tactic. Standing still is the truth. And the truth is, the only thing that has ever reliably separated the men who were never going to stay from the men who were simply scared of how much staying would cost them. Now, let me explain something slowly, because everything else in this conversation hangs off it. An avoidant man does not experience your pursuit as love. You experience it as love. Of course you do. That's what it is on your side. It's devotion and fear and loyalty all tangled together. But on his side of the gap, your reaching lands as expectation, as a demand he hasn't agreed to. He feels pursued the way you feel abandoned, as a threat to something essential in him. And so a terrible dance begins, and it has a choreography so predictable I could set a watch to it. He steps back. You feel the step back as danger, so you step forward. He feels your step forward as pressure, so he steps back further. You escalate. He retreats. And somewhere in the middle of this, you start telling yourself a story. His narrative and your narrative running side by side, and in your narrative, if you can just be understanding enough, patient enough, undemanding enough, he'll feel safe and come back. In his narrative, something quieter and colder is happening. He's learning that he can leave emotionally without ever losing you. And that lesson once learned is almost impossible to unteach while you're still enrolled in it. Think about it like this. Imagine a room with a single door, and imagine that every time he walks toward the door, you run to stand in front of it, not blocking it, not dramatically, just standing there, smiling, available, making it easy. What has he learned about the door? Nothing. He hasn't learned anything because he's never been allowed to feel what the door is for. The door only becomes real to a person when they walk through it and discover what's on the other side. Absence, the actual texture of life without you in it. And you, loyal, frightened, devoted you, have never once let him feel that texture. You've stood at the door every single time, and then you've wondered why he doesn't seem to value the room. Here's what's actually happening underneath all of this, and I want to walk through it one piece at a time. When you chase an avoidant man, you are not giving him love. You are giving him relief. Relief from the discomfort of his own ambivalence. Every text you send during his silence does the same job. It closes the gap that was supposed to be doing its work on him. The gap is not empty. The gap is information. The gap is the only medium in which an avoidant man ever has to sit with the question he's been avoiding his entire adult life, which is, what do I actually want? And what am I so afraid of? When you rush to fill the gap, you save him from that question. You become his emotional anesthetic. And nobody falls more in love with their anesthetic. They just become dependent on it and resent it at the same time, which is exactly the confusing hot and cold behavior you've been trying to decode for months. So what does he actually expect when he pulls away? This is where it gets interesting, because his expectation is the lever. He didn't expect you to go quiet. He expected you to protest instead. He expected the double text, the careful, hey, everything okay? The little bid for reassurance dressed up as casualness, because that's the pattern, that's the choreography you've both rehearsed, and he knows his steps cold. When you don't deliver your lines, the scene can't play out the way it's supposed to. He didn't expect you to get on with your life. He expected you to orbit instead. Close enough to want, far enough not to claim, waiting in the wings for whenever he decided to feel safe again. Orbiting is the deal the avoidant man is always trying to strike, whether he knows it or not. Your presence without his commitment, your warmth without his risk. And every time you've accepted that deal before, you taught him it was on the table. Your stillness, real stillness, not the performed kind where you're silent, but visibly suffering online. Your stillness tears that deal up in front of him without saying a word. And here's what most people miss. His reaction to your stillness won't be immediate, and it won't be dramatic. And the first thing that happens will look like nothing at all. That's the phase that breaks most women, because you're watching for a response and there isn't one, and your anxiety starts whispering that he's relieved, that he's forgotten you already, that the silence was a gift he was grateful for. I want to pause on that for a second, because that whisper is your wound talking, not the truth. Here's what actually happens inside him, in rough order. First, relief. Yes, relief. I won't lie to you about this part. The pressure lifts and he breathes, and he thinks, this is what I wanted. Then, curiosity, quiet and faint, because the protest he was braced for never arrived, and a small part of him notices the absence the way you notice a background noise only when it stops. Then, the curiosity sharpens into something less comfortable. He didn't expect you to be at peace. He expected you to be waiting instead. And a woman who is not waiting is a woman who might be leaving. And leaving is the one move in this entire dance that belongs to him. He starts to wonder why she's not chasing. And here's the thing. The wondering is what undoes him, because wondering is engagement. Wondering is his attention, which used to drift over you like weather, suddenly concentrating into a beam. Now let me slow down here and build this properly, because this is the part of the process that nobody describes accurately, and understanding it will keep you steady when the silence gets long. When you first go still, he experiences a void, small at first, No bigger than a missing text, a morning where his phone doesn't light up with your name. The void is easy to ignore. He fills his days. He tells himself this is healthy. He enjoys the lightness. But a void that isn't fed doesn't stay small. It becomes a vacuum. And a vacuum, by its nature, pulls. It starts tugging at the edges of his attention. He checks his phone without quite deciding to. He remembers a joke you made and reaches to send it to you and then stops. And the stopping costs him something he can't name. The vacuum becomes an echo. Because now, in the silence he created, your absence has a texture. He hears you in the apartment. He hears the version of the evening where you were there. The echo becomes a weight. The slow accumulating recognition that the silence he thought he wanted has become the silence that does not let him sleep. And weight, carried long enough, turns into inquiry. He starts asking himself real questions for the first time in the relationship because the anesthetic wore off and now he can feel the actual shape of his own life. Where is she? Why isn't she reaching? Was I wrong about her? Or worse, was I wrong about myself? And that inquiry, if it's allowed to complete itself without you rushing in to interrupt it, becomes a reckoning the moment a man stops managing your attachment and starts confronting his own. The whole thing, void to reckoning, is a terrarium he built himself and now has to live inside of. You didn't construct it, you just stopped maintaining the door for him. Does this happen on a schedule? No. Does it happen with every avoidant man? Also no. And this is the part nobody's going to like hearing. Some men pull away because they're avoidant and frightened and reachable underneath it. Some men pull away because they're done and they were hoping the distance would do the leaving for them so they wouldn't have to say the words. From the inside, in the first few weeks, these two men look identical. Same slow replies, same vagueness, same I just need to figure some things out. So how do you tell them apart? You can't. Not by asking, not by analyzing, not by rereading the messages until the words blur. There's only one instrument on earth that can tell these two men apart, and it's your absence. The frightened man meets your silence and eventually moves toward it. Clumsily, imperfectly, but toward it. The finished man meets your silence and feels the relief settle in permanently. Either way, you get the truth. And I know the truth is the thing you're most afraid of because you're afraid it will be the second answer. But listen to me, you are living with the second answer's worst version right now. In the ambiguity, in the orbit, in the waiting. The truth, even the painful truth, is a release from that. Chasing doesn't protect you from losing him. It just protects you from finding out you've already lost him while costing you your dignity in the delay. That's the thesis under all of this if you want it in one line. You cannot reach someone into staying. You can only stand still and learn who stays. Say it back to yourself, because everything hard in the next few weeks is going to be an argument against that sentence, and the sentence is going to have to win. So now let's talk about you, because so far this has all been about his mind, and his mind is not where your life happens. Here's the thing about the chase that you haven't fully admitted to yourself yet. It's not just that it fails with him, it's that it hollows you. Every morning you wake up and your first act as a conscious person is to check whether he has moved toward you in the night. Think about what that means. Your day begins with a verdict delivered by someone who isn't even in the room. Your mood is a weather report from a country you don't live in. And over weeks and months of this, something quiet and serious happens. You stop being a person who is in a relationship and you become a person who is managing a withdrawal. The friendships you half cancel. The work that gets your leftover attention. The version of you that existed before him. The one your friends actually fell in love with. The funny one. The opinionated one. The one who had plans. She hasn't gone anywhere. But she's been standing in the wings of your own life while you put him in the spotlight, center stage, with you in the front row, holding your breath. Whose life is this? I mean that as a real question. When did your one life become a waiting room for his decision? I want to walk through something with you, one piece at a time, because there's a distinction here that changes everything once you see it. There is a difference between your worth and your worthiness of effort. And I know that sounds like word games, so let me make it concrete. Your worth is fixed. Nothing he does, nothing he did, no version of this ending touches it. But your standard, the amount of effort, presence, and certainty you require before you give someone access to your life, that is not fixed. That is a dial. And here's the uncomfortable part. You have been the one turning it. Every time he gave you the bare minimum, the once-a-day text, the vague plan that never firmed up, the affection that arrived on his schedule and vanished on yours, and you responded with gratitude, with relief, with more of yourself, you turned the dial down a notch. Not because you're weak, because you were afraid that naming the standard would end the relationship. And maybe it would have. But a relationship that can only survive at your lowered standard is not a relationship that is surviving. It's a relationship that is being subsidized by your silence, your patience, your self-abandonment. Self-respect, it turns out, is not a feeling. It's a price you set and refuse to discount. And the avoidant man, whatever else is true about him, can smell a discount from 3 rooms away. And here's something most people don't see coming. The stillness we keep talking about is not actually about him at all. It works on him, yes, in the ways I've described. But its primary function is what it does in you. Because the moment you stop reaching, all the energy that was pouring out of you toward him, the monitoring, the drafting of texts, the rehearsing of conversations, the reading of his mood like tea leaves, all of that energy has nowhere to go, and it turns around and comes home. And at first, that is genuinely horrible. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. The first week of real stillness is not a montage of you thriving. It's you at 11 at night with your phone face down on the nightstand, shaking slightly, replaying the last conversation and trying to decide if you misunderstood something, wanting with your whole body to break the silence and just hear that he's okay. That urge is not love. I need you to hear that clearly. That urge is withdrawal. It's the same mechanism as any other craving. The object promises relief from the pain that the object itself created. And the only way through it is through it. Every time you don't send the text, you are not playing a game. You are doing the emotional equivalent of a muscle tear and repair. You are getting stronger in the exact place you are weakest. Nobody claps for it. Nobody sees it. It's just you and the night and the unsent message. That's where self-worth is actually built. Not in affirmations, in abstinence. What happens after the withdrawal? Something quietly remarkable. Around the 2nd or 3rd week, it varies, but it comes. You will have a morning where you realize, at some point past breakfast, that he hasn't crossed your mind yet that day. And it will feel strange, almost disloyal, like forgetting something important. It's not disloyal. It's your mind coming back into your own possession. And with it comes a kind of sight you didn't have before. Because anxiety, it turns out, is a terrible analyst. When you were inside the panic, every signal he sent got magnified and distorted. A warm text meant forever, a cold one meant goodbye, and neither reading was accurate. From the far side of the withdrawal, you can finally see the relationship as it actually was. And here's what many of you will see, and it will be both painful and freeing. You'll see that you weren't in a relationship with him. You were in a relationship with your fear of losing him. He was almost incidental to it. The love was real. I'm not taking that from you, but the love was drowning in management, and what you'll feel as the water recedes is not just grief, it's rest. The deep, almost embarrassing relief of putting down something heavy you didn't know you were carrying. Picture this. 6 weeks from now, you're out with people who actually love you, and someone says something genuinely funny, and you laugh. The real laugh, the one from before, and in the middle of that laugh, you realize you haven't checked your phone in 4 hours. Not as an achievement, not as discipline. You just forgot, because your life was more interesting than your waiting. That is the moment the power shift actually completes. Not when he texts, not when he comes back, when you forget to wait. Everything people tell you about the upper hand in dating is garbage if it means performing indifference while dying inside. The real upper hand isn't a position you hold over him. It's the moment you're no longer holding anything at all because your hands are full of your own life. Now, let me be clear about something because this is where people take a good idea and ruin it. Stillness is not a script. If you go quiet as a maneuver, if you're timing your silence, watching for its effect, counting the days until it makes him text, you are not still. You are chasing with your arms folded. And he will feel the difference because avoidance is, at its core, a hypersensitivity to pressure, and strategic silence is just pressure wearing a costume. The question you're really asking me, underneath all the others, is, how long do I have to wait before he comes back? And the honest answer, the coach's answer, not the friend's answer, is that the question itself is the trap. As long as your silence has a finish line, it isn't silence, it's a pause. A pause is you waiting in the wings for the reunion you've already written in your head. Real stillness has no finish line because it isn't pointed at him anymore. It's pointed at you. Do you see the difference? One is a tactic with his name on it. The other is a life with yours. So what do you actually do with your days while all of this is working itself out? Let's get practical, because insight without behavior is just a nicer way to suffer. First, and I'm serious about this, you tell 1 or 2 people the truth, not the polished version, the actual truth. He pulled away, it has gutted you, and you are trying not to chase. Anxious pain multiplies in secrecy and shrinks in daylight. And you need one friend who has permission to take the phone out of your hand at midnight. Second, you move your body, not to become someone new, not to emerge transformed, but because the panic you feel is physical, it lives in your chest and your stomach, and it metabolizes through exertion far faster than through thought. Walk, run, swim, lift, it genuinely doesn't matter which. What matters is that the alarm in your body gets a physical exit because you cannot outthink a feeling that lives below thought. Third, you re-enter the rooms you've been half absent from. The friend you keep rain checking. The family dinner you've been too distracted to be present for. The work or the project or the thing you used to care about before he became your full-time weather system. Go back into those rooms and be fully in them, not as a distraction strategy, but as a homecoming. And fourth, this is the one people resist. You grieve him on purpose. Set aside actual time for it. Write the unsent letter. Let yourself cry about the specific things, not the general fog, the way he said your name, the trip you were supposed to take, the version of the future you'd already moved into mentally. Grief that is scheduled and honored moves through you. Grief that is resisted at all costs camps in you indefinitely. You are not trying to feel nothing. You are trying to feel it honestly, once, instead of in a loop. And what about him? What do you do if he reaches out? Because if you do what we've talked about, there's a decent chance he will. And I want you prepared for the most dangerous moment in this whole process, which is not the silence. It's the knock on the door after the silence. Here's how it usually arrives. Casual, low stakes, testing the temperature. A meme. I saw this and thought of you. A hey, how have you been? At an hour that suggests he's lonely rather than changed. And your whole body will light up like a city at dusk, and every cell in you will scream that this is it, the reckoning, the comeback, the return of the man you knew was in there. Slow down. A breadcrumb is not a reckoning. A man who has actually faced himself, who has gone through the void, the echo, the wait, the inquiry, and come out the other side knowing what he wants. That man does not return with a meme. He returns with language. He returns able to say what happened, what he was afraid of, and what he intends to do differently. He returns with his chest open and his hands visible. Anything less than that is not the reunion. It's the orbit reopening for business. And you are no longer available for orbiting. That sentence is the whole rebuild in one line. Does that mean you punish him? Withhold warmth? Make him crawl? No, I'm not telling you to be cold, and I'm not telling you to be cruel. Warmth was never your problem. Your problem was warmth without a standard, warmth that kept flowing regardless of what came back. If he returns with real language and real change, you are allowed to meet it with real warmth, slowly, watching behavior over months rather than words over days. Because an avoidant man's promises are worth exactly as much as his sustained actions and not a syllable more. And if he returns with breadcrumbs, you let them lie. Not dramatically, not with a speech. You just don't organize your evening around a crumb. The standard is not a weapon you use on him. It's a floor you stand on. People step up onto floors or they walk away from them, but either way, you find out where you actually stand. And finding out, as we established, is the entire point. I'm going to say something now, and some of you will disagree, and I want you to sit with it anyway. There is a real possibility that the stillness does not bring him back, and that this is the best outcome, not the worst. Because if a man can watch you go quiet, feel the full weight of your absence, move through the whole terrarium of void and echo and inquiry, and still not move toward you, then you have received, at the cost of some painful weeks, information that would otherwise have cost you years. Years of orbiting, years of being the one who loved more, years of turning your dial down notch by notch until you couldn't remember what you used to require. The silence didn't cost you him. The silence revealed him. What was going to cost you him, cost you, was staying loud, staying available, staying permanently on call for a man who experienced your devotion as pressure and your patience as permission. You didn't lose the relationship when you went quiet. You found out what the relationship actually was. And I know that sentence is cold comfort at midnight, but it's true at midnight too. And here's what I'd say to the part of you that is still, even now, drafting the text. The part of you that has built a whole legal case for why this situation is different, why he just needs one more reminder that you're here, why the rules of human psychology surely apply to everyone except the two of you. That part of you is not stupid, and it is not your enemy. It is a very old, very loyal guard dog that learned a long time ago that love leaves, and that the only way to keep love is to never stop holding the door. It has been holding doors for you your whole life. It is exhausted. And what you are doing now, the stillness, the standard, the slow refilling of your own life, is not you abandoning that guard dog. It's you finally telling it, you can stand down, we're safe, we're whole. We don't hold doors anymore. We live in rooms and the right people knock. That's what self-respect actually is. Underneath all the slogans, it's not a pose. It's the moment you stop evacuating yourself every time someone else gets uncomfortable. So let him have his space. Not as a strategy, as a fact. The space was always his to take, and your grip on the door frame was never going to change his mind. It was only ever going to change what he thought of you while he made it. You stand still. You live loudly in your own life. You let the gap do the work the gap was built to do. And whatever walks back towards you out of that gap, whether it's him, changed and certain, or whether it's just you, clear-eyed and unafraid, you will be able to meet it standing on your own floor, at your full height, at your full standard. Worth isn't what he decides. Worth is what remains when his decision stops being the thing you're waiting for. You were never too much. You were just holding the wrong door. Now go home to yourself. He's had enough of your attention. It's yours now.